Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's February 9th, 2022. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented as always by LifeWallet, where the time is now to take charge of your personal health. Matt, another day, still waiting on coaching hires. Man, this has been like 2 months now. We've been waiting on coaching hires almost every day on Good Morning CaneSport. But I think, what's happening now is that they're waiting to see what happens with Kevin Steele, make sure he's going to be here. And also Josh Gaddis, I got to think, is going to have input on who the quarterback's coach is going to be. And I still think Frank Ponce is a live option. But, Josh Gaddis might have some other ideas. And it would only be fair to allow him to pick one of his staffers. So we'll see what happens with that. But I believe that's now the current maybe delay for another couple days in the finalization of the staff. But assuming Kevin Steele is going to be here, which I expect in the next 24 to 48 hours, potentially to be sorted out, I think we'll see an announcement from Miami relatively soon about official coordinator hires. Even though we've reported it, we know that who they're going to be. They have not been made official by the university. And I think the reason for that, Matt, and I think it's a good reason, is Mario Cristobal doesn't want to put a public announcement out on who his coordinators are going to be until he's 100% sure that that's going to be his coordinators. And to me, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Mario's scheduled to talk this morning at around 7 a.m. on our local radio show. So we'll be tuned into that, and we'll report whatever he says about the coordinators this morning, and he'll be asked about the coaching situation and all that. I don't think there's any rush to announce anything officially. We already know what's happening. Generally it's official when they send out a release, and that's after they've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, and everyone already knows about these hires. It's funny, in the old days, the releases sometimes were how you would break the news, not in the modern day of social media and rumor mongering. And I mean, there are some sites that put out, 10 different offensive coordinators, 10 different defense coordinators they thought could be hired. Watch out for this guy. This guy, reports are this guy might get hired. So I
none of them got hired.
It was only one's going to get hired anyway. So when you read about 10 different coordinators, obviously only one's going to get hired. But the point is, we already know what
get hired.
Right. We already know what the right.
But Josh Gaddis came out of nowhere. And right. Kevin Steele, I mean, we were on the Kevin Steele trail a month before he was hired. When he wasn't hired, we kind of had him off to the side. We weren't even thinking about him anymore until it actually really materialized. I mean, it's been a bizarre exercise covering these coaching searches. And, people keep asking us questions and stuff about it on the message boards. I don't know how to explain it any better way than the agents control the narrative on coaching hires. Period.
Yeah, well, listen. It's funny. Fans seem to still be fixated on breaking news. And the truth is, there have been breaking news stories that have been incorrect. And there have been breaking news stories that have been absolutely correct. And Bruce Feldman gets leaked information. I find Bruce to be very, I've worked with him before covering UM because he comes down and covers UM once in a while. And he's very knowledgeable and very credible. Yeah. And we want to be credible also, but we're not in a rush to just break a story to break the story, because the truth is, a rumor starts, we check it, and we find out if it's accurate. And if the rumor is actually accurate, then we can at least confirm it and let everybody on CaneSport know this is what actually did happen. And when there's these rumors out there, we've actually, numerous times, you've been putting out fires in the last month and a half saying this actually is not happening. This has not been finalized. This is not somebody they're talking to. This is a guy they are actually
talking to. I've been doing it for 2 months.
Right. So, it's almost like our job now is more policing than breaking news, as weird as it sounds. We used to.
I mean, we had the Kevin Steele story within seconds of it becoming even remotely close to being finalized. I mean, there's nothing much more we can do. I mean, there are certain national writers, and there's a few of them, both in college and the National Football League, that have deep relationships with these agencies that represent coaches. There aren't a lot of them. There's a few of them that are major agencies that represent all the coaches. And they use the writers sometimes, and sometimes the writers use them. And they get tipped on these things before they even really happen. And, there's nothing we can do about that. We do not have those relationships with those agencies. And nor
I think you're missing the bigger picture. What I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say, I know some people want us to break every news story. To me, that's no longer as important as it used to be. We used to have exclusive all day long. Recruits used to announce their decisions through us. Now they have Twitter to announce it through. So we're not breaking commitment stories anymore. We know who's committing, but we can't say it a lot of the times because they want to break their announcements.
We got to let the kids make their announcements.
So my point is, I think it's actually more important to be accurate than to be the first to break news. I don't know if you fans out there agree or disagree. To me, that's more valuable. If I'm reading, forget the Miami Hurricanes, if I'm reading a political story, a story about anything, honestly, I want to have accurate information. I don't care who wrote it first. And 99% of the time, I don't even know who wrote some of these stories first. If I'm reading them on Yahoo, I actually, believe it or not, I read CNN and I read Fox News because I like to see both ends of the spectrum. And I have friends who are Democrats and Republicans. I'm an independent, just in case all of you who are wondering. I drink my matcha lattes. It doesn't make me a left-leaning liberal or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I'm actually an independent voter. I try to make up my own mind on things. So my point is, I don't understand why why we get a post once in a while. How come you didn't break this story? That's not what's important. What's important is that you get it right, whether it's 5 minutes later or an hour later. If you can't sit for 5 minutes or an hour to let us confirm what some agent has told another guy that the guy wrote on
Twitter.
Before
the deals are even done, while the deals are still being negotiated, it's being leaked. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. What if the deal falls through?
Well, that's my point.
What if that coach, Matt, goes to his current head coach and tells him, hey, I'm going to Miami, and the current head coach says, no, you won't. I'm giving you a $500,000 raise. You're staying. Or I'm going to make you a coordinator. Or there's a million things that go on in this business.
Right. And I know you were frustrated. You get frustrated because I know you had Kevin Steele, I think it was 5 minutes before it was even tweeted out, but you wanted a second source to confirm it because you didn't want to have a rush of judgment. And so you get beat by a few minutes. If fans can't understand that this is our job, if we ever get something wrong, it's hard to live it down.
Yeah, you think?
It's something that people remember.
You hear about it for 10 years if people think you get something wrong, and you might not have even had it wrong. It just may have changed.
So listen, the bottom line is we weren't wrong about anything. We told people some things that were being reported were not correct, and we were right in that, and we confirmed the things that were actually accurate. So listen, Gary, at the end of the day, I think you came out looking fine. Just because one guy in the message board complained and said, how come you didn't break all the coaching stories? What's going on? What happened? It shouldn't bother you. That's all.
No, it doesn't. But I don't mind explaining to people either what the process is and what's actually really going on. And it's the agents that are controlling the narrative, and the agents are leaking the prospects of deals before they're even done because they are negotiating them and they feel like it's going to get done. What's their benefit? They get extra pub for their clients. That's really the benefit to the agents. And they stack up favors that when they need something, they can get it. And when they need one of their clients rumored for jobs that they're not even really in the mix for because it'll get that guy a raise, and they ask for those favors, they can get them. So it's a game. It's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody that covers an NFL team right now, and literally what he said being a beat writer in the NFL has become, or even like in the NBA, it's Adrian Wojnarowski. It's like the guy breaks. I mean, he's sitting there on draft day telling you who the draft picks are going to be before the commissioner even comes out and says who the draft pick's going to be. In the NFL, I guess it's Adam Schefter and some other guys. So the NFL writers, they just follow those guys on Twitter because everything from the NFL is getting leaked to those guys before they could even begin to break those stories. So the whole world of sports journalism has changed. It's become run through social media. So I don't mind explaining that to people so they understand, what it is and why what they're seeing it is. All right. So, so you're going to start seeing some of these things come official. I think it'll be in the next 24 to 48 hours. You will see Miami announced its coordinators officially, even though it's we've known it for days, obviously, but that's why there's been a delay. All right, so let's talk about the news of the day, Matt. And we have a story on the website that is really, really interesting because I think a lot of people take a look at the Miami receiver position. They look at Jacoby George, they look at Keyshawn Smith, they look at Xavier Restrepo, and all just the whole Brashard Smith. You could go on and on with Michael Redding. They just go on and on and on and think that everything is great at receiver at Miami. And I would point out that the best receiver on the team this year was Charleston Rambo, and they're talking about him being a 5th, 6th round draft pick. Now, maybe he moves up a little bit. He dominated at the Shrine game. He certainly didn't hurt himself out there. He was probably the best receiver in the place, but they're not talking about him as like a 1st or 2nd round pick or anything like that. And he was the best receiver on the team last year. So if your best receiver is a mid to late round draft pick, Matt, how is that a settled wide receiver room? So the point I'm getting at is the story that we have today talks about the challenge of replacing Rambo, the challenge of replacing Mike Harley, who might not even get drafted, but he was a huge performer for the Hurricanes, and they got to replace that production. I mean, it's a legit subject. We address it today.
So Charleston Rambo, to me, I don't look at the whole NFL draft thing. He was a great college player. His problem when it comes to the NFL is he's got great speed, but he's not one of those slot guys who's shifty and fast. He's a straight downhill blazer. He's also not big and physical enough where he's going to overpower any cornerbacks. The NFL is a sort of different animal. If you could draft somebody for college, he'd be a 1st round college draft pick. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He just doesn't really fit the NFL mold where he's either big, physical, and fast or small and quick and fast. He's neither of those. He's sort of like a tweener, if you want to call it, for an NFL receiver. That's the only reason he's sort of dropped down the boards. He's a fantastic college receiver. Mike Harley, as good as he was 2 years ago, I felt he wasn't particularly great this past season. He took a backseat to Rambo. He did not have safety help over the top on him 90% of the time. And he didn't dominate this past year. I love Mike Harley to death. Love Mike Harley to death. I'm not going to lie to people just because I like the guy. That's just what I think. So the bottom line, though, is Miami's losing both those guys. They combined for 136 catches, a little over 1,700 yards. So Miami's losing 60% of its wide receiver production, about the same percent of its total yardage from the wide receiver position. That's not nothing. And it's really the only major loss on the entire offense, because I don't really see losing Cam Harris as a big deal. I like Cam Harris a lot, but they have other great running backs, and people would probably argue that Jalen Knighton had just as good, if not better, production than Cam Harris had before he was hurt. Your quarterback's back. Your top tight end is back. Your backup tight end is back. You're bringing in a top freshman tight end. You're not losing any tight ends. Offensive line, you lose 3 starters, but listen, they're not difference makers. And Avon Donaldson, Jared Williams, and Corey Gaynor transferring, I don't see that being an issue at all. Which really just brings you to the receiver position where you have actual real losses. And, I know, Gary, you kept hammering home over the last, ever since the season ended, about how losing Rambo is an enormous problem. You got to bring in a transfer to help out, blah, blah, blah. I personally, and Mike Harley agrees with me, by the way, I personally think Jacoby George will be the number 1 receiver this year. And I know people think I'm crazy.
But is he elite, Matt? We don't know yet. Is he a true number 1?
Okay. But the name that Mike Harley said, when he watches this kid play, he says, Amon Richards. And look what he did as a freshman. He just broke records, right? So it's not out of the realm of possibility. This guy's a 2nd-year player, could be great. And then you bring in you take a flyer on a Clemson guy from, Frank Ladson, who has all the skill in the world, just has had a lot of injury problems. And then you look at some of the guys that got some reps last year. Like, Keyshawn Smith was a starter last year. He wasn't great, but he's good enough, and he may get passed on the depth chart this year because they have those 3 true freshmen from last year who were so good. So there's a lot of competition in the wide receiver room. And the most interesting thing to me, and we'll look at this at some point down the road a little closer, but the most interesting thing to me is how do you keep the guys you want to keep on the roster happy? Because you've got 9 receivers. You've got 6 running backs. Those 6 running backs are all going to be freshmen or sophomores. The 9 receivers, a lot of them are young, freshmen and sophomores. And you don't want a guy who says, oh my gosh, I'm only getting 2 and 3 reps, leaving for a lesser program where he thinks he'll be a starter this year. So you have to keep all these guys happy somehow. I don't know how you do that. That's gonna be a challenge. And I think that's across the board, honestly, at every position, because in this new era of transfer portal, you can't have a depth chart where you say, this guy's my starter in coming out of spring practice. You're going to be the second team guy, and you'll get some reps. You can't say that anymore to a guy. You can't say, hey, you've got to beat out this guy because he's better than you anymore, or the kid just leaves. So I'm very curious to see how they split up reps in the spring, how they release depth charts, if they release them at all, and how this is around the nation, because it's not just a Miami problem.
And look, you got to hope Frank Ladson maybe becomes the #1 receiver. You know, you need a go-to guy. Like last year, Rambo was a go-to guy. There's no doubt about it. You need that kind of player in a successful offense. You know, maybe Ladson becomes that. Maybe Jacoby George becomes that. Maybe even Keyshawn Smith develops into that. You know, we don't know. You're going to have new coaching, new offense. The new offense might suit Keyshawn Smith better than it suits Jacoby George. We don't know yet. Well, you know, all this is to be determined. But the bottom line that we are addressing today is that it is going to be a challenge to replace that production of Rambo and Harley. And it's going to be something we'll be watching very closely in spring practice. All right, another story on the website this morning takes yet another look at Alex Mirabal, who just keeps piling up the offers, man. He is a recruiting machine. There is a reason why they call he and Mario Cristobal Batman and Robin, because these two guys get after it on the recruiting trail. And we've talked on this show earlier about they're not just recruiting dudes. Like I mean, they're not just recruiting Jags. They're recruiting dudes. And they're recruiting big guys, big physical guys that can develop into elite offensive linemen at the college level. And Mirabal's got more than 30 offers out, and a kid by the name of DJ Chester is the latest one. So we take a look at that on the website today.
Yeah, he's like the Oprah Winfrey of coaches. He's like, you've got an offer, you've got an offer, you've got an offer. I was telling you yesterday when I researched how many offers he's given out. I had to go through a very long list researching this, and I didn't realize he'd given out this many offers in such a short period of time. And what I said to you is, I said, like, is he taking 20 guys in this class? Because how do you decide if you're giving out 33 offers already, and there's going to be more to come? How do you decide which 3 or 4 guys you really want? Like, does he have a sheet in his office that he keeps crossing out names and writing another one?
Come to campus in the spring so you can eyeball them
but when I say cast a wide net, this isn't just a wide net. This is the Pacific Ocean. He's casting this net over. So we'll see what happens and who winds up being real, but. How do you stay in touch as an offensive line coach? I guess you text every kid every couple of days. Do you have some sort of program on your phone? Maybe Mario Cristobal should create an app called the Cristobal app. I was trying to think of a fancy name for it. I don't know. Where it just it dings you when it's time to text the next recruit, and it would be going off every 5 seconds. I guarantee you.
Yeah, with that guy every 5 seconds.
Mirabal and Cristobal, it would just be going off constantly. Like text this guy, text that guy, text this guy.
I heard he texts like 75, 100 kids a day. Like,
I don't know. I can't. I can speed type, but I can't text. Whenever I text anything, I don't know if my fingers are too big, but I wind up misspelling half the things. And if I don't reread what I texted, half the time it's very embarrassing what I wind up writing. It's like from a 2-year-old. I can't text. I'm not a texter. I could not be on Mario Cristobal's staff. I would be fired very, very quickly.
Before we get to more, let's take a moment right now. And let's hear from golfer Morgan Pankow.
As athletes, we spend a lot of time taking care of ourselves. If you're like me, away from home, traveling, or faced with a medical emergency, it can be difficult to gather medical information or records in a time of need. And again, in an emergency, may be life-changing. From remembering your prescriptions to communicating results, let's say from your past physical, it can be nearly impossible. Now there's a solution, and it's called LifeWallet. LifeWallet is a HIPAA-compliant, highly secure app that gathers all your medical information in one spot. LifeWallet is super easy to download. All you need to do is go to your app store and search for this blue icon, or go to lifewallet.com and links are available there. This can save your life.
I think she's doing awesome.
Listen, at some point before the season, we're going to make a bet on how many wins the Hurricanes have this coming year. And whoever loses the bet has to wear that top for one of these episodes.
That's no comment on that one.
I think that's a fair bet.
I'm not getting myself in trouble on that one. But anyway, I think she's doing great. She's a couple weeks into being a marketer with her NIL contract, and she's put out her first couple commercials have been phenomenal. I think it's great what these kids are doing. And I love that we're showcasing it, and I hope people enjoy it, and they feel like they're getting a glimpse into what's really happening. And this is NIL, man, and you're not seeing this at any other school in the country like this right now. Miami is a pace setter, and John Ruiz gets all the credit for it. He's going to have company soon. I hear the Moss brothers are putting their own NIL programs together. They're just taking a little longer and being a little more methodical about it. But this guy's done a great job getting these kids involved, and there will be more in the coming days.
Yeah. And I know you're not running my commercial, but if anybody's interested, I'm starting a company called Wife Wallet, where you can buy a wallet for your wife, and she can put all sorts of things in there. They're all different colors. So look for that coming soon. I'm going to do some advertisements with just regular people. I can't afford the actual football players. So stay tuned for Wife Wallet coming soon to stores near you.
All right, let's shift gears to the basketball court, where the Canes basketball team, Matt, has amassed, just to me, probably maybe the biggest game of the season to this point, when you factor in what this means. And they've been struggling.
You say every game's the biggest game of the season. You've said that the last 2 or 3 games.
But this is really big now because they're on a lose. They haven't been playing well, and all that work they did early in the year with the upset of Duke and everything else, and is teetering a little bit because of the fact that they haven't been playing as well the last week or so. This is a big game tonight against Georgia Tech at home, and so we take a look at the magnitude of that game, and also how Miami players see a path out of their slump. So,
did you watch Jim Laranaga's Zoom call with the media yesterday?
Yeah.
Did you notice that he credited? I think it's a student reporter. I don't know who it is. He credited this guy for coming up with the idea of letting his players play a fun game of, he doesn't know if it's handball or baseball. It's hand baseball, I guess. Towards the end of practice to sort of get them enjoying life again, which I think is great, but at the same time a little scary, because I'm going to make some suggestions. And now if Jim doesn't take my suggestions, I'm going to be very upset that he took this other kid's suggestions. I got a bunch of suggestions for Jim. Should I share some with you? I was going to take each player out stone crabbing one at a time and teach them how it works. And then that evening, we're going to basically throw the claws at each other like dodgeball, because that's a lot of fun too. So that's the next thing I'm going to propose for Coach Larinaga. I think that'll be a lot of fun, really get the team playing well finally. That's going to be the key.
I think the key is Wong and Magusti got to start making their shots, and they're in a little bit of slump. Charlie Moore also hasn't been making as many shots as he was at certain points of the year, so they just got to get hot again and start making shots. And I think at that point they'll be fine, and they are still firmly in the ACC race.
Yeah, well, I asked Jim about I don't know the numbers in front of me. I think 5 of the last 8 teams that they play have losing ACC records. And one of them's at 500 right now. So I asked Jim, sort of, no coach is going to say, oh, we have an easy road, or, oh, they're always going to say, oh, every team's tough, and we take it one game at a time. That's the traditional thing. So I didn't want to ask that. So I just asked him sort of in general ACC terms, how he views that, basically. And, what he said was sort of interesting, because he said it's just basically any team can beat any team in this conference right now. And it's true. It's not like a standard ACC season where you got those bottom 3 or 4 teams that you could basically say, when we have them at home, we're going to win that game. Georgia Tech beat Florida State, I think 3 or 4 games ago. This is a Georgia Tech team that I think is 3-8, if I remember correctly, in the ACC. But they could beat. I'm not going to say they're going to be. They could beat Duke, but they could beat probably every other team if they have the right things going on that day. So, who's to say what's going to happen tomorrow? So that's why it's a big game, because it just, if you can't beat the 3-8 team, then you're just basically, it'll just say Miami is what we thought they were, which is a middle of the pack, middle of the road ACC team. They lucked into a few close wins earlier in the year. Now they're going to have lost 3 in a row. So that's why it's an important game to me, because that's what they're going to start believing about themselves. Oh my gosh, we lost 3 in a row. We lost to a 3-8 team at home. That's when you start doubting yourself as a player, right? What's going on? We were so good before. Maybe it was just that we won some close games, got lucky. That's the sort of thing that creeps into your head. So they do need to win this game. That's why it's a super important game. I did not agree with you. The previous 2 games or 3 games were super important. They were in first place in the ACC. So now they're in crunch time. This is, to me,
they're not in first place anymore.
No, but this to me is a super important game, more so than the last few, because you lose this and the wheels could start coming off a little bit.
Yeah, right now I guess they're tied for 3rd in the ACC. Duke's at 9-3. Notre Dame's at 9.
The problem is Virginia right now is probably, if the season ended right now, I think the NCAA would take Virginia over Miami, even though Miami has a better conference record, because Virginia's been playing really well, beat Miami pretty badly.
Yeah, but Miami has a road win against Duke. That's a big win.
So Virginia beat Duke also. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so having a road win at Duke is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for today. We thank you for joining us once again on Good Morning CaneSport. For Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow, everybody.